All right, we're starting off another beautiful day here in the shop with my little friend. Gonna do a little destruction today so we can do a little rebuilding. Let me show you. Our old exhaust here, she's, whoop, sneak under there. She's got some holes, seen better days, pretty nasty. But it's really neat the way that it's ran. This is starting, it's like midway through the car, right? So it comes up, sneaks up and around, goes up over the frame, comes over, around, down. The fuel tank would be here. We'll talk about that in a second. Big old suitcase muffler. And now whether or not we're going to replicate that path, I'm not exactly sure. Won't know until we get these coil springs out of there and some airbags in place. See what kind of clearances we have. I mean, it's really kind of optimal for it, so maybe, I don't know. What I do know, it's got to get out of here. And I'll show you why. As you notice, no fuel tank, right? Boop, that's gone. Sent these to our friends Sims Radiator Service and Radiator and Fuel Tank in Lawrenceville, Georgia, and they're getting that cleaned up for us. Another neat little engineering thing here. So this is the fuel line. And the fuel line goes in the chassis and runs inside of the frame rail the entire length of the car, which is really wild to me. And then it pops out, boop, right there to a rubber line, and then goes back in right up to the fuel pump. Now, having the fuel line run through the rail, I can't tell what kind of condition it's in. I can't lay my eyes on it. You can kind of look through some of the little the holes in the frame, but you can't really tell where it may be chafing. Is it rusty? I don't know. And just back here alone, you can see it's been sitting up against the rail and rubbing. Having a frame rail full of fuel, that's definitely some smoky unit stuff, so I can appreciate it, but not on this guy. This seems like a rolling bomb going down the road. We're gonna run an external fuel line, and it's gonna be really close to this muffler. That's when we're gonna go ahead and take that out of the way. I'll show you what we're gonna do. But first things first. Wow, that's a dull blade. Whoa, simmer down. Oh, that mount fought back. Whoop. All right, let's try that again with a newer, less dull blade, hopefully. Just like that, tailpipe delete. Look at this. This is the one that went up and over the frame. Look at all these bends. Wow, that thing is crooked as a politician. I hate to be the muffler guy that replaced that. Just got back from the fuel tank and radiator shop. Everything was good to go, thankfully. Cleaned up nice, you can see in there. This thing was just full of varnish and nastiness. It has a little staining, but it's not scaly, it's not rust, it's just stained from where all that varnish was in there for many years. No leaks, they pressure tested it, so we're good to go. Saved a lot of money by doing it that way. Now we're going to make sure our sending unit is good. I'll show you how to ohm that out. And the little gasket here, well, to be honest with you, I forgot to get one. The guy's down there, and it's Sims Radiator Service in Lawrenceville. If you ever need a radiator or fuel tank done and you're close to there, it's worth it. Little things like this. I said, hey bro, do you have a gasket? It's kind of simple, right? He said, no, I don't have a gasket, but here's some material for free that you can cut it out yourself. I mean, stand-up dudes down there. So now we'll just trace this out, and he gave me a tip to use soapy water or like Windex. X-Acto knife this out. So now I need to find an X-Acto knife and a silver Sharpie. So now we're on a quest for a silver Sharpie and an X-Acto knife.
hell are you doing?
Nothing?
It doesn't look like nothing. You look awfully suspicious. Hey, my silver Sharpie.
Gotta go.
I had to steal that back.
Just like that. From old and busted to the new kind of hotness. Trimmed it out. It's not perfect, but it's going to be under this on top of the tank where we'll never see it again. Hopefully, as long as this is good and it doesn't leak, we'll be good to go. Should have ordered a new one, but here we are. Next thing's next. We're going to check the resistance on the SIN unit to make sure it doesn't make us walk because it's telling us the wrong thing. Turn it over here on the ohms, which is the little omega sign, and the 6000, because why not? Take our 2 leads. I don't think it really matters which one's which. We're gonna put one on the body and then one on the little stud here where the SIN unit wire goes. And once it calms down here, so it's got a reading of 2. Okay, so as we move this float arm up, we want to see an increase on the number. Yeah, there we go. Now as we go down, the number should go down. Thank goodness. Looks like she's good to go. I already sprayed it down with a little brake parts cleaner. Make sure we get all the funkiness off of it. Yeah, time to throw the tank together. Fuel tank is officially installed. Got the new hose coming up to our new fuel line right here. I like to use these fuel injection style clamps. They look a little better and they obviously hold better. So we're using those. And to show you the routing here is it'll come up over the rail, come around the top of the rail, down here. Now, we're using all these rubber isolated clamps, and what I do is I start out with self-tappers. I'll come through and just put them all with self-tappers because they're so easy, but I'll come back, re-drill this, and tap it like, I don't know, 1032 or whatever, quarter 20 sometimes, depending on the size of the clamp. So these are just kind of like mock-up, if you will. Runs up over, around, down, coming up the frame. What I did here is I come through, and there really wasn't enough room to go over this mount, and obviously we don't want to come under. So what I did here is we just drilled holes, and this will get a rubber grommet. I didn't have any that was this size. Once again, mock up. Come up through here to a little union, up through there to the fuel pump. Easy peasy. This way we know we have fresh fuel line run outside of the frame rail, that we don't have to worry about chafing or anything. Don't have to worry about any kind of rust from this super old 60-something-year-old line. Yeah, just a little peace of mind. While we're waiting on the air ride to get here, to get this thing just really just sitting down in the weeds where it needs to be, got some other little projects we need to tackle along the way. Oddly enough, don't have all the parts for that either. That's the supply chain. Yeah, messed up a little bit there. Let me show you what we're working with currently. So up under the car here, you can see factory, we have a Y pipe, so that's the driver's side. Comes over, connects to the passenger side with a 2-bolt flange, and runs back to where I cut it off. And if you look from this direction, whoop, that hangs down, I don't know, maybe 1.5 inches, 1 3/4 down from the bottom of the frame. And I talked to a guy online. He said he installed the same airride kit, and his chassis sits 1 inch from the ground. We don't want to lay on this. You run a risk of like cracking your exhaust manifolds or breaking the pipe. It's no good. Want to go with something bigger, better, cooler. This is a 3-inch section here at the Y pipe, and it goes back down to like 2.5. And it's got all these crush bends where, you know, the pipe gets smaller. And granted, don't get me wrong, Engine Masters proved that this isn't terrible, but it isn't optimal either. We're going to try to get a 3-inch pipe in here. A couple of the hurdles we're going to have here is going to be this cross member, which is the trans cross member. You can see there's just not a lot of room measuring from the top of this to the bottom of the frame rail. 3 inches, that's not going to be enough. But if you look, there's enough meat that I think we can clearance that out. I've kind of drawn it a little bit in the grease and grime. We can bring that up, reinforce it a little bit. That one should be fine. As well as this cross member. Whoop, get here where we can see it. This cross member. We've only got like 2 3/4 inches from this to the bottom plane of the chassis here. So this is going to have to be notched up a little bit in itself. Moving back a little further, we won't really know about this section because we pivot from the torque ball to this whole torque tube here. And I don't know how a 3-inch pipe is going to sit in here in relation to the chassis. We're not really worried about this section yet. We're going to wait till the air ride gets here. But from here forward, let's go ahead and start tackling it. All right, been tinkering on the exhaust a little bit here in my free time. I'm going to catch y'all up real quick. Cut this big, ugly, prone to leak 2-bolt flange off. Put us a cool little V-band. Now I was wrong. I thought this was a 3-inch section. This is actually 2 3/4. But I took a transition piece. Actually, this is half of a 2-inch V-band, which worked out perfect because a 2-inch V-band is 2 3/4 on the outside of the bottom, 3 inches on this side. So it actually, you see inside, transition's nice. You know, budget build, we don't have time to wait on a real transition piece, so had this laying around, there we go. Got it all tigged up when Taylor told me I'm supposed to MIG everything. And move it back a little further, the cross member here, you can see like this side's the before, and this is the after, so open that up a bunch, reinforce it by putting the flanges back on it. Same thing back here with this cross member. You can kind of see how high it was originally, how high it is now. Cut all that out, whittled it away until we had clearance, boxed it back in, welded it, painted it, good to go. Had some scrap laying around, worked on a little first section here. Wasn't quite 45 degrees, I think it was around 30. Kind of trimmed something up, slip it. The cool thing about these V-bands, you can kind of slip it up in there and it holds itself a little bit. Same thing with our flexi pipe. Now, I don't like the woven ones. I like these kind of bellow style ones. I think they look way more professional. But if you look on the inside, there's like a lip here. I don't know if this is exactly how it's supposed to go, but I always put the lip with the exhaust flowing that way. Just seems like it wouldn't be pushing against it. I don't know. Just kind of a little tip I found. Finally had a little time to get back on the Buick project, specifically the exhaust system. Remember before we come in here, we'd hooked into the factory Y pipe, did a little flexi jobber, come in, opened up the cross members, cut a chunk out of the floor. Still got to fix that. The goal here was to keep everything above the frame rail. So you can see right over there's the frame, and you'll just have to take my word for it. All this is just above the frame rail. So if we ever lay it out on some uneven ground or something, we don't have to worry about this hitting, breaking manifolds, whatever. We tigged the front part of the exhaust. We MIG'd the back part because Taylor told me I was silly for doing that on this kind of car. But we couldn't leave out some V-bands just for serviceability and how easy these are to work with. Threw some hangers in, went up and over the axle. We'll swap around here, or excuse me, went up and over the frame. It's kind of hard to see up in there. Probably should have taken the video, but with the tire off. But you can see we have clearance. What we did is we took the springs out. Since this is going to be air ride, we took the springs out, raised the rear end all the way up, tied it up with 2 ratchet straps, and now we can see we got clearance. That'll come out behind the tire here to our Flowmaster Flow FX muffler, and we just kind of scarf the tailpipe, and you'll see about that much of it. Man, that bumper's dirty. We gotta do some cleaning on that. But that gives you an idea. You'll see just ever so slightly amount, but for being honest, when it's on the ground, you won't see any of it. Turned out pretty cool. Now we gotta start it up, see what it actually sounds like. Oh yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. Enough where you know it has something, but not deafening, annoying, loud. Oh yeah, I got the Carb King over here checking out my work. This part, you can actually hear how quiet the motor is now.
That fan out there in Cock Island scares me a bit.
I know. Woo. That's the D-Limmer 3000 right there. Not bad. All in all, I'm happy with it. Next up, got to address the braking system. This car came with 4-wheel drums, and oddly enough, a vacuum assisted master cylinder. Pretty cool. This car obviously has the bolts instead of studs, so that's why this looks a little funny. I assumed I was going to have to replace all the hydraulics because they're old, and I've just had terrible luck with these things blowing out. You know, it looks dry now. First time we take it to the end of the road, it'll start leaking, guaranteed. On top of that, we've had some repairs in the past. This aftermarket like galvanized line here that's kind of twisty looking, and we already started tinkering on this side, and you can see the line is just completely stopped up here. We're going to replace all the wheel cylinders, all the lines, master cylinder, brake hoses, etc. Start with these guys. Like I said, I already started tinkering on that just to get the feel for it. Wheel comes off, it'll be the bolts, then you'll have 3, one's an alignment dowel, and then 2 bolts that hold the drum on. I was fully expecting these things to be worn out, blown out, junk, but actually, if you look, these shoes are like brand new. And the drum, albeit a little rusty on this side, I mean, to me, looks like it's been recently machined, and machined really well. There's no lips, no gouges. Everything is really nice. I think we might have lucked out. Regardless, this guy, he's got to go. Put a new one on. They're cheap enough. They're like $18 a piece. Cheap insurance. And just to show you, start tinkering with this, you can see like right there, it starts to get a little rust around the line, and the line will do this, and it will fight you all the way off. We're going to replace these anyway. I'm just going to go ahead and cut this line, take this fitting out. We'll put new lines, new fittings, and it'll be, this is a 3/8 wrench to take this off. These are 1/2 inch. We'll take those out, and I'll show you how to do the front. Once the two bolts are out of the back and the fitting is out, they make a really cool tool to take these springs off. I don't have one. I've always done it this way. It's the way my pop showed me years ago. And you want to keep track of which spring is which in most cases. I found that on this car the front and rear spring's the same, but always just kind of set the rear one further back than the front one on the lift arm, and that way I know which one's which when I put it back together. They look the same, but I don't know, it makes me feel better putting them back in the same spot. Springs out of the way, we get the little washer thingy, and then we can take and just kind of pull the shoes back a little bit, kind of set them back over like that, and then we'll take our hammer and tap the wheel cylinder out. And these will have the little plunger rods, whatever you want to call this guy. Whoop, look at that. Yeah, you can see a lot of corrosion around the edge of that. Oh yeah, look how much corrosion was in that one. Even though these were probably replaced semi-recently-ish, just judging by the shoes, that would have lasted about 3 cycles of the pedal. Got a little carried away with myself and chucked that one off. Always match your new wheel cylinder up, the orientation of the fitting. Make sure everything looks good, size-ish. Now you can, whoop, I can go away. Your new plunger rods. Push those down in the boot. And what I'll do is I'll start with one. Let's see if I actually orient that correctly. There we go. Put it in there pretty good. Take the second one. Push that guy. And then they go in the edge of the shoe like that.
Get our 2 bolts. Pull that guy in. You don't have to go gorilla tight on these, just give them a nice little snug.
And you can take your brake shoes, kind of set them back into place. And they'll meet up right around this pin. And then just reverse the order. With a washer thingy. And the way these springs work, well, start off, you can see this into the spring. This locks into the shoe like that and turns, and it'll go around this pin. And I always like to pay attention to which spring goes on first. Whether or not this really matters, I'm not sure, but this spring was behind this spring, so that's the way it's going to go back. Another pro tip, only do one side at a time. That way, if you forget how something goes back, you can always just go reference it. One spring. Oh, almost messed up. There we go. Come here. 2 springs. There we go. Kind of just give that a little taparooski. Knock out some of that asbestos. Yeah, I mean, the shoes are good. We're not going to worry about those guys. As for the brake adjustment, everyone's got their own practices. Everyone's got their own opinions on how this goes. I'll just show you what I've done in all of my years. We use the drum to kind of center the shoes. Come here now. Simmer down. There we go. Yeah. Since we had the shoes pulled back, they're just kind of candy-wampus. There we go. There we go. So you can put the drum up, put the pressure on it. You could put the bolts back on, but you can hear, well, say you could hear, this one's wanting to spin. Start a couple volts, keeps, because right now the drum's wanting to spin on the hub. What I'm listening for is the amount of friction. The amount of friction we're getting from the shoes to the drum itself. Put that guy in. That was an interesting sound. And you can hear, it's just got ever so slight amount. And this is your adjuster at the bottom. Spin it in or out to set the preload on it. I want just a little more. Went over about 2 teeth on that, just to put a little more preload on the shoe. If you have very little preload on it, come on, get to your home, there you go. It'll have a long travel on the pedal. If you have too much preload, well, it'll burn the brakes up. You'll usually know within the first mile. You can drive it and see how the foot pedal feels. Then also, if you want to get real technical, you can get a little thermo gun. You could go around to each wheel and see what kind of heat the brakes are creating to see if one may be dragging. But you can hear right there, got just ever so slight amount of drag. Not even drag, it's just a little bit of contact. That's perfect, because really the shoe isn't truly centered in there right now. That'll center itself and we'll be good to go. The cool factor with this car is it was a power brake car. Not so cool factor, you can't buy these. You can buy a rebuild kit for $300-ish. You can buy one refurbished by someone on eBay for $800-ish. You can buy an aftermarket thing that's supposed to bolt right up. It's like $650. This is supposed to be a budget-ish style build. I really don't want to just start blowing $650 on this, but you know, like we can still get the master cylinder. It's like $69. Still, at the end of the day, it's a single line master cylinder. And for those that don't know, as the piston comes out, it pushes pressure to this, and it tees off multiple tees. This one line feeds all 4 wheel cylinders. The problem there, you press the brakes, one wheel cylinder fails. Now you have a leak that's affecting the entire car. A few pumps of the brakes, now you're getting air, now you can't stop, you're running in the back of it. It's just no good. What do we do? Well, we can see how it works. Took some measurements, looked around. This is the firewall plate. So it mounts, whoop, like that. Goes on the firewall. Use this when I unbolted everything to take some measurements off of. I also have the pedal here, which it's really neat. 4 bolts holds the pedal in. Pretty cool. Take it out, paint it, modify it, whatever you want to do. Cool factor with that. Started digging around, once I had my measurements, started digging around on Speedway to see what kind of either universal stuff, or I was curious, what about an Impala? It's a GM product. Found this 8-inch dual diaphragm booster. It also came in the kit with Corvette 1-inch bore master cylinder. Golly, it's been a long day. Having a hard time talking. Adapter brackets, push rods, clevises, proportioning valves. I mean, it even came with 2 different styles of bleeder kits. Pretty cool kit. $140-ish, I believe it was. Thought to myself, okay, we can make something fit here. We can cut and modify. We figure this out. I want you to look at this. GM had the foresight to make this bolt pattern dang near exact. It just needs an ever so slightly kiss of the unibit. Oop, you get back on there. Hey, kiss the unibit with that. This will actually go right in. Okay, that's pretty cool. Well, we can look at the old booster, and here's the push rod that comes in to the pedal that goes onto our pin there, and we can see, we can measure from the back of the booster to the center of the clevis pin, and it's in its, like, I guess you say, resting position, because the pedal was up in the car. We've got like 3 3/4-ish from the back to the center of this pin. We can measure a new booster, and from the end of this, it's like 4 inches. And as you can see, there's plenty of threaded rod. Take a little off, modify this slightly, modify this slightly. I'll walk you through the whole process. We're going to be able to make this work with little to no modifications, and way cheaper. We'll leave a link, a screenshot or something for this setup situation. I'll show you exactly how we put it together. But I will say, before we get to putting it together, please, people, get you a can of this. the Seymour's Cast Blast. Part number CA16-48. Take 10 minutes, clean your master cylinder, take off your cap retaining rods, obviously the cap, tape up the top, leave the plugs in the side, rinse it down with some brake parts cleaner, acetone, whatever you have, and just give a couple coats of this stuff. There's nothing that bugs me. Well, it's on my list of things that bugs me, but when you pop a hood and you see a rusty master cylinder, it kills it for me. Nice clean engine bay, detailed, not detailed. Come on, these things flash rust in no time. Stuff isn't that expensive. It doesn't take that long. Do that for me. And don't put exposed 6x9s in the package tray. On to the project. What we came up with is we needed to reach that 3 3/4 goal between this mounting flange and the center of this hole. Took the clevis, took 1 inch, get that out of here. Shorten that puppy up, and that'll give us just enough thread to get a little bit back and forth movement. And remember, a little movement here equals a lot of movement down on the pedal. So you don't need that 2 inches of adjustability it had up here necessarily. Made that guy. Then took our pedal, and before it had a stud pressed through it. We took a grade 8 bolt, TIG welded it on there. Now that will go, oh, come on, one-handed, whoop, right through there with a nylock and some washers. Boom, be good to go. It was pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Went ahead, bolted this up. I'm going to show you some stuff about bench bleeding and running these lines. I just got off the phone with Speedway. They gave me somewhat of bad news. Got to buy about $100 more worth of stuff, because why wouldn't I? This is hot rodding. Let's go ahead and throw it in the car. Don't forget, while you're at it, take a little time. A little rattle can restoration. Yep, time for assembly. With the brake booster and master installed, time to work on the plumbing. Now, originally this kit came with a brass proportioning valve and some pre-bent lines to mount everything up. Well, if we're being honest, yeah, I messed that up. I misread it. I don't know what to say. It happens. That proportion valve is for a disc front drum rear system. We're running drum drum, and the way it works is the brass proportioning valve has a residual valve built into the rear part of the brakes, and what that does is it keeps a certain amount of line pressure on the drums, so that when they open up to stop, they don't go all the way back down to close, so that there's less of a brake stroke, if that makes sense. And also, when the pistons stay out, it's less likely to leak. So it only have a residual valve in the back, not the front, and the way that it would be valved for the front for disc brakes just wouldn't work for us. Called up our friends at Speedway, and this is what they recommended. Here we have an inline residual valve, 10 psi, labeled in and out, pretty simple, as well as a manual brake bias controller, which will go to the rear brakes. And this will just let us just fine tune it in to make sure we're not locking up the rears or doing anything funny. All this will be plumbed up with mockup. If you've never seen mockup before, this stuff is amazing. It's nickel copper bend, some kind of magic that's so easy. Look, literally one hand you can take and you can bend it. A lot easier with two. And it bends really well. Look at that, one hand. You can't do that with stainless, that's for sure. You bend this stuff around, get the shape you need. It's not terribly expensive. It looks pretty cool when you kind of go over it with some red Scotch-Brite. You get this at, I don't know, this came from an Advanced. It comes with the 2 nuts on each side. Let's make sure you get the right ones, because they do make this in SAE and metric, so get the right ones. Comes in different lengths. Cut it to fit. We'll plumb it up and I'll show you how it'll work. For the front brakes, comes out of the front port right down here to our residual valve. Now these do have an in and an out, so pay attention to the flow. And that goes down to our T. That one goes that way over to the passenger. This is the driver's side. What we did is we reused the stock brake line retaining clip right there. It's kind of hard to see, just drilled and tapped the frame in a new spot right there, right in front of the shock, and used the stock hose that's meant for the car. Obviously, these have ports on either side, so make sure you block these off. I like .3 fluid just because it's easy, it's cheaper, you can get it anywhere if you needed to do something. Bleed it out. Obviously, vacuum line 3/8, and that goes right here to the little port in the front of the intake, or at least that's where we put it. There's plenty of ways to do the braking system in this. This is just the simplest way I could come up. Like we talked about before, the stock booster can be rebuilt, but the price of this, just the price of everything here is how much just the booster costs to be rebuilt. And the way that we modified that clevis, it goes right to the pedal. We've already bled it and it feels great. I'm not a purist. It doesn't have to be the exact stock thing. And I hope this helps someone out because this just saved me a ton of money. Now we get to drive it and tune on our adjustable proportioning valve to tune in or out the rear brakes. Always keep in mind that when you're driving it, the brakes are going to warm up and they're going to grab a little differently. So drive it a little bit, tune on it till it feels good, and then really like start stopping and going. Kind of like you're bedding in brakes for the first time. Do like a 20 to 0, 30 to 0, 40 to 0. Really get some heat in the drums and make sure it's not going to lock the drums up the hotter they get, or vice versa. Maybe they fade when they get hotter, but typically they get a little stickier, at least my experience with them. Now, let's go try to use these. We're really close for our first drive. Maybe. First cruise, what do you think, Taylor?
We got a lot of interior work to do before you
well, yeah, it's going to be one of those milk crate cruises because it doesn't have a seat in it, or floorboards, or ignition switch, or still haven't heard anything that's going to keep me from driving it.
had to squat down on your level. Had to get on your level.
Does it look as cool as it feels?
Yeah. So how much lower does it go?
There.
That's sick.
Damn, it rolls on the ground.
Dude, it's low. Hold on. You got about 2 1/4 fingers to the frame.
I know, I can see.
Well, you can?
Yeah, Bluetooth floor panels.
Yeah.
That's all the way down.
And that's that. I tell you what, nothing like the first drive in something that you have slaved over and busted knuckles and spent way too much money on. Even though it was a couple little mini laps around the parking lot, the payoff of that is just so rewarding. Can't explain to you how happy I am with it. Taylor's got a lot of body work to do. You know, it's about half a square acre of roof and deck lid to paint. Interior, got to finish some floorboard stuff. There's a laundry list. But now it runs and drives. Now the air goes up and down. It's getting closer. Every opportunity we have to work on it, we're making real good progress. Now that it goes up and down, Taylor isn't so negative about the project.
What? What are you talking about?
You're always...
Just pan that way a little bit. No, I was talking about
yeah. It's always negative. Unless it's a Vega with a small block in it, he ain't into it. But that's another story for another day. Thanks for sticking around. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next time. Nothing cools you down on a hot day while you're working on rusty old cars like a little monster. Love that stuff. Just got back from the tire store. Took my pickup truck here. Picked up our wheels and tires for the Buick. These are the original wheels because we're going to stick with original wheels and the full face caps. Now, normally we would get these things blasted and paint them, or get them blasted and get our buddies over at Harris Custom Coatings to powder coat them. One, we don't have the time for that, and two, it isn't that kind of car. Three, obviously the budget. It is what it is. What we did instead is took the cone shaped wire brush on a 4.5 inch grinder, went around everything, all the beads, cleaned them up really nice, got all of the rust, the tire particulates, because they leave like this rubber residue behind. These old, well, not these, the old junky bias plies were on here. Got all that stuff off, cleaned up around the valve stem areas really well. Our buddies over at Kessler Tire got us these Nexen in Parisi. Anyway, 215/75 15s, stock size, pretty cheap, good to go. Anyone that's ever had white walls knows that this blue crap here, this can be a pain to get off. And when I say can be, you never know. All four of these tires bought at the same time. Now normally when they're not too bad, you can take a Mr. Clean Magic Eraser here, maybe just a itty bitty touch of soap, and like you can check that guy out there, that's pretty dang white. I mean, looks good, no problems there. That one, it's pretty good, has just a little bit of a blue hue to it. I don't know if it's going to show on camera very well. I'm pretty sure you can tell how blue that one is. All cleaned with a magic eraser, not all with this one. This is actually, you know, you can see it kind of tears these things up, but it just sticks more on some of them. Don't know why. If any of you guys out there have a magic combination for this, let me know. I'll show you what I do. First thing is I always try that first because that's the easiest. And now I left this one. I don't know what this one might be. Easy, might be hard. We're gonna give it a try, and I'll show you how we fix that. First things first, gotta get a magic eraser a little wet. Get this a little wet, and I mean, a lot of this will come off by hand. Not all of it. Couldn't be that easy. If it was that easy, it wouldn't be a hot rodder. So, get that wet. Just go across and lightly scrub on it. And I say lightly because if you bear down, it really blows these pads apart. Sometimes when they're being a little stubborn, I always at least give this a try. Put a little soap on there with it. And there you go. Of course, we get lucky on the one I'm actually filming. I'll show you on the more stubborn one what we have to do. All right, you can probably see on this one, it's definitely got that blue tint to it. It's not gonna look cool for us. So I like to do in this case, get a little Ajax, a little Dawn, little whatever you can steal out of the kitchen without your wife complaining. Put on just a regular tire brush. Let's get it all soaped up good. And then I use some 3M wet or dry 320 grit sandpaper. And I fold it over into 3 sections just like that. You can see. And a little trick I learned, kind of hold it like that. You're actually going to sand the sidewall. And really not the sidewall, really just the white stripe. Just that little bit of abrasion. It'll take off the blue color, leave the white, and yeah, it's already satin, so you don't have to worry about scratching it up. I don't like any grits stronger than this because it seems to, I don't know, it just seems kind of tear the sidewall up more. But 320 seems to work pretty good. I don't know if you can see how much wider that is. Boy, would you look at that. Now, that's a pretty white wall. A little tire grease. Have that thing looking like new money. Would powder coating be better? Yes. Would wide, you know, like the 3-inch wides, would they look cooler? Probably. But this is what we got. And this is what we're gonna run. We never really called this thing a budget cruiser, but let's face it, everything I have is a budget ride. Yeah, now we just gotta catch up this other one and Yeah, there's our wheels and tires.